Mic check, mic check. We're all here. Let me see if this is working. All right, there we go. So thank everybody for joining. First of all, how amazing was the talk before with a computer vision, AI, and AR together? I'll talk a little bit about the convergence of different technologies today as well in my talk, because I think those are the exact types of use cases that really have legs and that can really scale and have return on investment. And I'd probably lose 5 or 10 pounds by using that. So that was pretty exciting to see. So today we're going to talk about what I'm calling the Metaverse bubble as it stands, but some real use cases being built out that provide a real return on investment at scale. So I'm going to start by introducing myself and talking about my background a little bit. Then I'll jump into the hype cycle that I believe we're a part of currently. Then I will select 3 key use cases that I'm excited about sharing with you guys. And then we'll jump into some ending thoughts and maybe do some Q&A. I think we'll have about 1 or 2 questions, time for 1 or 2 questions. So I started my ARVR journey back in 2011, 2012. We would come out to AWE, sneak in, be excited to try out the demos. At the time, there wasn't as big of a hype around this technology. We were building augmented reality applications for museums and national heritage sites. So we had built out an AR app with a colleague of mine from Los Angeles that you would point the iPad towards the rotunda, the building that Thomas Jefferson architectured, and then he would come to life and tell you about himself. Now, we also work with some museums and national heritage sites so that we would bring paintings to life, sculptures to life, and then they would tell you about themselves. You know, fast forward to 2014, this is me, slightly less jaded and with a little bit more hair on the left-hand side at the Interactive Media Research Lab at USC, where I'm playing around with a virtual reality headset that was so old that it didn't even have room for headphones. It had speakers next to it. And you couldn't carry it on your head, so you had to carry it with a metal arm and your hands and move it around at the time. So regardless, I've been in this space for a very long time. After 2014, I joined an amazing company called Emblematic Group, where our full focus was immersive journalism and social impact-oriented virtual reality experiences. We were fortunate enough to visit over 40 countries, 100 cities, be part of festivals like Sundance, Tribeca, South by Southwest, the World Economic Forum, building social impact-oriented virtual reality experiences that would put you into the shoes of other people that you could empathize with using this immersive technology. Once I completed the foray there, I joined Deloitte. And now with Deloitte, we have about 110, 120 person practice that's focused on all things unlimited reality. So the entire XR spectrum, but also blockchain as well, where we're supporting our clients with advisory capacity, implementation, as well as operate plays as well. Within Deloitte, as a senior manager, I'm co-leading 2 different sections. We've separated out the XR industry, the unlimited reality industry, as we're calling it, into 5 different fields of play. The first field of play is X-reality experiences that are a little bit more focused towards the consumer, marketing, advertising, consumer-friendly experiences. You might have heard about our amazing USGA app that was just nominated for an Emmy, where we have real-time stats tied to an augmented reality experience from the actual games being projected into the real life in 3D, so you can feel as though you're actually at the golf game itself. Virtual goods and commerce, everything that falls into the retail, consumer products and good category, as well as a lot of the NFT work that we're doing falls into the virtual goods and commerce space. And then as I mentioned, I lead the augmented work and learn and co-lead the enterprise simulation space, a little bit about which we'll speak to today. And under which falls immersive learning, frontline worker enablement, knowledge management, as well as virtual events and collaboration. So if you have any questions about any of these industries or any of these fields of play, please find me after the fact. I'll be happy to talk to you about them. And then finally, what we believe is that really at the core of all these technologies will be our trust, resilience, and cybersecurity practice, which I won't be touching on today, but it is a very interesting field that I think is much relevant to where we stand today in the industry. So I've been fortunate enough in my career to work with dozens of different brands around the world, ranging from the smallest nonprofits to the largest governmental organizations like the Air Force or the Navy, and every company and every industry far and wide in between. And within that journey, I was fortunate enough to see a lot of different patterns that have led to the talk today that I'm excited to share with you. In the 2014 realm, as I was joining Emblematic Group, we had Facebook buy Oculus for about $2 billion, which really jump-started our industry in a way that was unimaginable to us, who were just doing it for passion projects for national heritage sites and museums. Out of the woodwork, we had different clients popping up and asking for different types of experiences around the world. We even had one client ask us for an experience that basically would allow them to use augmented reality to wrap tacos better and put the right amount of sour cream inside of the taco. It might not have been the best use case at the time, right? So, fast forward from 2014 to 2017, after all the noise, immediately different types of articles started coming about saying VR is dead, AR is dead. It was never really a thing. Nobody's building or nobody's buying these headsets, and virtual reality will never come to life. And I like to call that period of virtual reality in 2017 the nuclear winter of virtual reality that we went through in 2017. It was very interesting to see, within 2 or 3 years, the change from this is the future of every single interaction we'll ever have to this technology is now completely dead and it won't ever come to life. And so I was curious to myself as to why that was happening, at which point I started learning about the Gartner hype cycle. And I started realizing how real of a phenomenon this was through my own experience in ARVR. And part of the talk today is actually about how I think this is happening again now today. And I want to tell you guys where I believe we stand within the current hype cycle. So for you that might not know what the Gartner hype cycle is, it's essentially a hype cycle tied to visibility on the y-axis and then time on the x-axis that takes you through whenever a frontier technology comes about, what happens to it in the eyes of the public. Initially, there's a technology trigger. The technology becomes incredibly popular. Then you have the peak of inflated expectations. It's the silver bullet that's going to change the world. And then suddenly you move into the trough of disillusionment. And then slowly but surely, the real value-oriented use cases come to life, and you move towards the slope of enlightenment. And then the technology actually does come to life with the value-oriented use cases, and then you have a plateau of productivity. This can take different levels of time and different layers of time depending on the technology cycle, but this is the Gartner hype cycle. So this made a lot of sense to me back in the time, and then when I analyzed that against where Gartner thought the technologies were, it was very accurate. People thought AR/VR was dead, but actually it wasn't dead. The only use cases that remained and were being built outside and after the nuclear winter, if you will, were the technology use cases that actually had value surrounding them, that had the end users and the end clients considered at the center of the experiences that were being built. And so it was very interesting. I also was seeing and hearing a lot of different news about different types of technologies. As you guys are all familiar with, we have been moving in computation from the mainframe all the way towards the cloud, and now closer back to the actual end devices. So edge computing was also becoming popular in this time frame as AR/VR was being called dead, but was being surrounded by more value-oriented use cases. Very similarly, we had 5G in 2019 that was having its own hype cycle, where 5G was going to be the end-all be-all of all interconnectivity. Everybody was going to be using it for every single use case, and you were going to be able to download Netflix films for half a second. Sadly, the 5G industry also went through its own hype cycle, and currently the conversation is, what does 5G do? Why is it relevant? Why do I need 5G? But the devices don't have 5G. How long is it going to take for the devices to all have 5G? Will they ever have 5G? Will ever 5G become a real thing? And so, I'm here to tell you that, yes, it is becoming a real thing, but it's doing it in the shadows with a combination of different technologies that are surrounding it. They're converging together to bring value at scale and real measurable return on investment at scale. And so, with that, I'd like to start showing you some of the use cases that I think are those valuable use cases. I have a lot of colleagues here that we've built out a lot of different applications with. Sadly, I can't touch up on every single one of them, so I've only selected 3 because we have about 15, 20 minutes. But for the purposes of this presentation, I selected a medical use case, telementoring, and telesurgery. We selected a supply chain logistics warehousing focused use case. And then we also selected a maintenance and training and learning focused use case. So through each of these use cases, you're going to be seeing the convergence of different technologies come together to bring about return on investment at scale. So this is one of my favorite use cases. We call this graphic a MOAG, mother of all graphics. Please feel free to use the term back when you get home as well. Essentially, it goes over a reference architecture and a mind map of how these combination of technologies come together to try and eventually save lives. On the right-hand side, you are seeing a scenario where somebody is in a field hospital in the front lines. These are referred to as Role 1, Role 2 environments within the military health system, where somebody is either in a foxhole or within a tent or a field hospital. Sadly, these physicians don't have all of the expertise they might need. They're still doctors or they're still physicians, but they might not have the specialties required. So they might not be brain surgeons or spinal surgeons. So the use case that we developed along with one of our clients was focused on being able to connect in close to real time using ultra low latency, the ability to have a doctor, a specialist surgeon from somewhere like San Diego, all the way out to the front line somewhere else in the world, so that they can in real time communicate with one another and be able to draw 3D incisions on the body of the individual that's actually in the front lines, thereby potentially saving their lives and then expanding the expertise at the point of need. We're also able to transmit electronic IoT data as well as electronic health records and audio and visual and 3D data all within the environments of both users. And this happens because of edge computing, it happens because of 5G, and it happens because of augmented reality, all put together in a package that allows us to bring about value at scale and create real return on investment in the form of potentially saving lives. So this is very exciting for me as a use case, and I wanted to share that with you. The other use case I want to talk about that we are actively delivering on for different types of clients is the future of the smart warehouse that is 5G enabled as well. We're using 5G here because of the number of endpoints associated with how many different devices are actually on site and are being used. So here you're seeing autonomous robots delivering different types of packages and assets across the warehouse, being able to talk to one another and not hit each other or human beings in the process. You're also seeing environmental monitoring sensors be able to measure the humidity as well as the temperature within those environments so that the assets are kept safe. You're seeing augmented reality tied with computer vision that allows you to be able to look at objects, recognize them, count them, classify them, and then figure out if things are missing. I think it would be great if we actually used Passio for this because they have a better computer vision technology than the one we developed. But you know, like I said, there's a lot of endpoints across this different architecture that are capitalizing on the 5G, the speed that 5G brings, as well as the ability for 5G to connect to as many endpoints in real time, thereby delivering intense value for the warehouse officials, allowing them to increase inventory accuracy by up to 10%, the repairables accuracy by about 100%, and then consumables accuracy by about 98%. And what these technologies, this collection of technologies also allows for them to do is create a massive digital audit trail where they can keep track of where every single asset was at what time, who was touched by and what and why, so that at the end of the year, when they get audited, they have an immediate massive digital audit trail that they can capitalize on. So this is another use case that is very relevant that we are currently delivering at scale to different types of clients. And then finally, last but not least, and I promise you the next slide does not have as much text on it. On the left-hand side, let me start off by talking about what the problem here that we were trying to solve was. One of our clients was looking to completely revamp the way in which they were conducting maintenance operations and repairs, as well as how they were teaching those maintainers how to operate within these environments that are not always safe and where they're dealing with very complex machinery. And so the problem we went about solving was, and what was interesting about this client was, how do you bring XR for immersive learning, but also maintenance, repairs, and operations in the front lines while people are actually dealing with those assets, and how do you do that at scale? How do you manage the users? How do you manage the content? How do you manage the learning? How do you manage the devices? All tied to one single ecosystem and reference architecture within which there are close to 4 or 5 very important and highly complex technologies. So we went about doing that. So we started delivering virtual reality headsets for the traditional classroom environment, where users are able to see virtual versions of the assets that they'd be dealing with and fixing. And they can do this in a multiplayer fashion and collaborate with people that might actually not even be in the room, their professors potentially. And then if you go towards the right-hand side, you'll start seeing the frontline locations and people actually utilizing these technologies, AR technologies, at scale when they're doing their day-to-day jobs for maintenance, repairs, and operations. And they're able to connect to remote experts that might be somewhere else, whether they're on-site or off-site. And then what's really interesting here is, and where AI comes into play for us, is we can detect now how much time each user is spending on what step along the way. And then we can feed that back into the learning management system and the learning ecosystem to then automatically issue learning modules tied to what they might not know well or what the system feels as though they are spending too much time on. So we have a direct mechanism for tracking how much time is being spent and how successful repairs are in the front lines, and we're able to tie that back into an XR-focused learning management system. Of course, for all of this to be able to operate, we're capitalizing on 5G as a network, and we're also capitalizing on edge computing. I won't go too deep into the operational benefits and the training benefits. I think most of those you guys are already very familiar with. It's everything ranging from having enhanced confidence in applying the skills learned in virtual reality in real life, all the way to increased expertise at the point of need. And I'm happy to share this material with folks that are interested in it after the call as well. So, where are we today when it comes to the Gartner hype cycle? I feel as though, we are at the edge, if you will, staring down a mountain that has, NFTs and Metaverse written all over it. There's once again a lot of noise in the industry and a lot of different use cases that don't necessarily need to be in the Metaverse, that don't necessarily need to be in blockchain, that probably doesn't need to be an NFT. I don't know if we need another panda picture for $600,000 in the form of a non-fungible token. So I really do believe that we are, in a place where there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of hype. There's land plots being sold in virtual environments for millions of dollars. There are, different types of NFT assets being sold for, over $50 million each. It really feels like the time back in 2014 and 15 where we had all of this crazy hype around augmented reality and virtual reality. And everybody was building something just because it was AR or VR. So this was the analogy I was going after. I think, we're right at the edge of a very steep slope about to ski down altogether, and it's a double black diamond course. So we need to really start selecting the key use cases that we're developing in a very careful fashion moving forward. And I think the bubble done pop, if you will, already almost. We're beginning to see Bitcoin, NFTs, SPACs, meme stocks, all beginning to come down a little bit already. We're seeing folks that had bought NFTs for a couple $1 million in the hopes that they'd be able to sell it for $48 million, end up selling it for $280. So I really do think that we are at the edge of what's about to become a bubble in the form of NFTs and the Metaverse. However, fear not. I'd love to talk a little bit about what we can do to ensure that we survive this upcoming nuclear winter, similar to how we survived the 2016-17 nuclear winter for ARVR, and we're here developing applications that are focused on return on investment. So number one, don't mind the noise. As developers and creators of content, please don't try to add every single new technology into the tech stack every single time it feels relevant or it might not be relevant. There are times when they are relevant, there are times when they are not relevant. Not everything needs to be a non-fungible token. And so I think instead of focusing on the noise, please try to focus on the value that's being created by the technology itself. Two, be on the lookout for convergence opportunities. Similar to how I was describing edge computing, 5G, ARVR, all coming together to deliver value at scale, I think a very similar ecosystem is growing right now, where we'll see a lot of different types of DeFi mechanics, a lot of different types of blockchain mechanics be implemented within virtual worlds or the real world in industries that people might not have expected beforehand. So be on the lookout for convergence opportunities between technologies. I think, as I mentioned before, another trough of disillusionment is coming, but please do not be, I would say, please don't fear that. It's going to come regardless. It happens every time new technologies come about. Try to focus on the value and go through the trough of disillusionment by focusing on the end customer. And I would say that would be my final takeaway and recommendation. And what I found, please use human-centered design problems or principles to be able to find exactly what the core problem is. Whenever I kick off projects with our clients, I try to always have a UX researcher and a UX designer at the core of that project and have them be in the kickoff and the discovery of that project. Because UX designers are really the heroes, in my opinion, of our generation. They can really pinpoint the exact problem that needs to be solved and what sort of solution solves that problem. So focus on the customer, focus on the end user, focus on the real value, not on the shiny objects that are here. I think by doing so, we will collectively be able to successfully go through the trough of disillusionment that is on the other side. And then by the convergence of different types of technologies, we'll be able to deliver value at scale and create real return on investment collectively as a group. So thank you, everybody, very much. I'll take some questions now.
Anybody who has any questions for Eren following that great presentation, please come right up to one of these microphones that we have set up for you. And don't be shy. That was one of the best presentations I've seen, one of my favorites from this week.
Thank you, sir.
So please, have at it.
Hi, Eren. Thank you very much.
How are you?
I have a question regarding companies that are now curious and are trying to explore. Based on my experience, what happens very often, they come with question, can we do something about this metaverse? And I was curious, how do you actually address those conversations? What is the first step in order to address that doubt, curiosity, and to some extent chaos?
Yeah. We charge them a massive consulting fee. No, I'm kidding. No. I think, we will take business usually from companies that are looking to figure out what to do in the space. We'll usually have strategy engagements associated with that. But if a client really doesn't have a good use case and the industry is just not right, and maybe they're not in a place where they're in a position they're able to understand what the technology even is, we'll try to first get them to a place where they understand the principles of the different technology and the tech stack. And then if it makes sense for the client, we will do a discovery session with them as well. So we'll take a look at the use case, we'll take a look at the problem, we'll have our UX designers come in, our CX designers come in. We'll really try to identify and understand what the key problem is, and then only think about the solution then. I'm seeing a lot of different clients having been built, tons of different pilots and POCs that have not gone anywhere, where they've wasted a lot of their money. And we don't want that. We don't want pilots that have been left halfway in the street somewhere, craving for more funding. We want something that we can prove out has return on investment within the first 4 to 8 weeks that we are engaged at the discovery level. We like to calculate how much return on investment the client could potentially make by utilizing XR technologies within the first couple of weeks. And we will then develop potentially an experimentation plan that actually allows us to keep testing that hypothesis across the life of the engagement as well. Some of the most strong and powerful and successful projects I've been a part of have always had a testing element, both qualitative and quantitative, along each milestone of the project. So the initial hypothesis that you might bring about around ROI to the client, you can continue to test to see if you're hitting the mark. So that's what I would recommend.
Right, but so what you're saying is that it starts with educating them first.
A little bit.
And then do the research, and then afterwards set some clear KPI when they can get some immediate return and evaluation on actually the engagement. As you said.
Absolutely, absolutely. And not every client, just because they want to do something, is a good client. So there are times when saying no is better because it might prevent you from tackling a real opportunity right around the corner because your team is fully engaged.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Just want to thank everybody for joining us. Let's please give a hand for Eren.